There are some things about our Christian traditions that are so prevalent, so common in our churches that almost no matter where you'd go, there's something familiar and recognizable. Sometimes it's children's songs or practices, and today I just want to start off with a fill in the blank. See if you can say the next part. Zacchaeus was a... How do you all know that? Yeah. Thank you, Alan. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. Now, the scripture does say that he was short and that he had to climb a tree to see up over the crowd. But coming from a Scots-Irish American's perspective, we use the word we sometimes. And wee is more of a description for a small child, a sweet wee babe, or a wee little mouse, or a wee boat. The children's song says that Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he because it is in our nature not to tell the children about the ways that people mistreat each other. Zacchaeus' problem was not that he was short. Zacchaeus' problem was not that he was a wee little man. It was that he was a tax collector, and the people of Jericho did not much like tax collectors. In fact, they pretty much hated them. And I sat down and I was thinking as I was writing this, now, what would a modern equivalent be of a tax collector in the way that we feel about them? And then I thought, of course, a tax collector. But the reason that people hated tax collectors then was different from the reason that we dislike them now. We don't like tax collectors because they represent the chunk of our income that we have to give the government and the fees and penalties that go on top of that. However, in Jesus' time, people did not like tax collectors because they were working for the Roman government, which had conquered and oppressed them. So people did not like the tax collectors because they were making a living working for the oppressors. The closest modern equivalent that I can think of was the very unpopular taxation of British colonialists in America. You know, you might remember from your high school history class, no taxation without representation. The whole point of the American Revolution was that people were being taxed, and yet they were having no representation. And the same thing was happening to the people in Jesus' day. They were being taxed, but they were being oppressed. They were an income stream. And imagine if you were a colonist, how you would feel about the person who was responsible for charging you a tax on tea or on newspapers. The people of Jesus' day knew that anybody who would take the job of head tax collector was obviously a crook and was obviously rich. Rich with their money. And if you asked them, there couldn't be anybody dirtier or more impure than Zacchaeus. They hated him because that is what you were supposed to do to the tax collector. Everybody knew that. But it seems that Zacchaeus was not such a bad person after all. His name meant pure and clean, and the scripture tells us that he gave half of his income to the poor, and if he made a mistake collecting the taxes, he would refund your money 4 times over. So this clean and pure, honest and ethical philanthropist who just also happened to be a wee little short man, he went to find Jesus. He wanted to meet somebody who would have a good influence on his life. He wanted to meet somebody who had made it his life mission to love everybody, especially the kinds of people that everybody else ignores, rejects, and even hates. And so wee little Zacchaeus climbed a tree And Jesus noticed him. And everybody else noticed that Jesus had noticed Zacchaeus. They grumbled and they grumped indignantly, saying, "What business does Jesus have getting cozy with that crook?" Now, we all know that I would never do that. We all know that you would never do that. Except we all grumble and grump sometimes, don't we? If Kroger is out of our favorite brand of ice cream, we grumble. If someone makes up a commercial that insults our favorite political candidate, we grump. If Christians from another denomination are acting in a way that we don't think they should, we grumble. If someone forgets our birthday, we grumble. We grump if someone else is hogging all of the attention. We grump when we don't like the sermon. We grumble when someone else sits in our seat, whether it is the lazy boy at home or the pew here in church where our family has sat for 20 years. We grump and grumble over the silliest of things, don't we? And it is worth noting again that Zacchaeus was a good person. He told Jesus that he gave half of what he made to the poor. And there are not many of us that could make that claim. We think that 10% is really stretching it, don't we? And we don't see a lot of companies that offer us any more customer service than refunding the difference. And when I got a letter from the IRS that they had made an error and owed me money, I was surprised. But the refund was only the difference owed. I sure would have liked it if they had given me 4 times what they had taken. So why did Zacchaeus do this? In the book of the law that he followed as a good Jew, it said that if you had wronged someone, you should pay them back what you owed them, plus 20%. But if you ended up with their animal, then you were supposed to give them back 4. So if you had 100 of their dollars, you would have to give them $120, but if you had one of their sheep, you would have to give them back 4 sheep. So Zacchaeus was so ethical that he refunded people's money using the more restrictive rule about animals. Basically, this wee little man who was wee in size and wee in reputation was doing everything he could to follow the law and go above and beyond. And despite that fact, people still treated him like he was nothing. I wonder how many people in a crowd had benefited from Zacchaeus' honesty and charity. And Jesus proclaimed to the grumpy and grumbling people assembled there that today was Salvation Day at Zacchaeus' home. Now, I don't think that Jesus was only talking about salvation for Zacchaeus in the future. I think that he was also talking about salvation for Zacchaeus today. He was pointing out that this person who was so hated and so outcast by the people in his society, he pointed out that this person had been restored to the community, that he should be loved and valued as an individual, that he was no longer pushed aside and lost as a person without grace, but that he was also reconciled to the people. Being an outsider is difficult. Jesus knew that. And we are all outsiders sometimes. We all feel lost and ignored and hated sometimes. And perhaps the very most lost people are the ones who do not know that they are lost. The people who spend so much time pushing other people to the margins, hating, ignoring, and excluding people, who spend so much time doing that to justify themselves. Perhaps those ones are the most difficult to reach at all. And Jesus came for them too. because Jesus came for everyone, even those of us that don't know we are lost. Jesus' love is here not just for those of us who are wee little people climbing trees because we know that we need him. But Jesus' love is also here for those of us who grumble and grump. Today is your salvation day, too.